the meditation on death is probably a meditation subject which is not so commonly taught in the United States, but it's one of the more popular meditation subjects amongst the Asian Buddhists, and it's also an extremely important meditation topic because, the aim of the Buddha's teaching is to see things as they really are. And one fact of life that we all have to recognize as it really is the fact of death, the fact of our own mortality. And we probably all know the legend about the Buddha's renunciation, the story about his renunciation. According to the traditional story, he was brought up as a prince in the palace, had no prior acquaintance with the real facts of life. And then one day on an excursion outside the palace, he saw first an old man, then a sick man, and then finally he saw a corpse. And then after that he saw a renunciant, a samana, which inspired him on his renunciation. So when he saw the old man, of course, he was shocked by that. When he saw the sick man, he received a further shock. But the sight that really knocked the ball out of the ballpark was the sight of the corpse, because that reminded him that he and everybody else that he loved was subject to death. Okay, so when we undertake the meditation on death, we are in a way enacting the Buddha's own process of awakening to the truth of life. We're sort of piercing through the delusion of permanence that usually envelops the mind, and we're coming to recognize that our own life is moving towards its end, towards its termination, towards death. And the meditation on death has several purposes in Buddhism. Let me just get my notes to remind me. Okay, one benefit is that it helps us to distinguish, I would say one benefit is that it helps us to order the priorities in our life, to distinguish what is really worthwhile and valuable, what is essential in life, and what are the trivialities in which we very often get caught up in our minds. The trivialities that take us away from the essence, all of the fascinating things, the attractions, the enjoyments, the amusements in which our minds get enveloped and wrapped up, and then we lose sight of what is valuable and essential. And so when we recognize the fact of death, that our time here is limited, then it comes as a kind of stark reminder that we should order our priorities properly, devoting a more substantial part of our time and of our attention to those things that are truly conducive to our benefit, and put on the sidelines, on the margins, the distractions, the amusements, the enjoyments that pull us away from what is really valuable and essential. Also, when we do, a second benefit of this practice is that when we do the practice, the meditation on death, regularly, it doesn't mean as a daily practice, but do it at least occasionally, or every day at least remind ourselves of our mortality, then it helps us to face death when it actually occurs. Because usually we sort of, as I said, we have this kind of veil over the mind which obscures from our mind the fact that we're going to die. And yet we can die at any time completely unexpectedly. You know, when you read about, say, in the newspapers or on the news reports about people, you know, in a nightclub in Orlando, you know, they're enjoying themselves, suddenly they're shot down. None of them expected that that night they're going to die, but death came suddenly and unexpectedly. Or people, you know, caught in a suicide bomb, or people caught in an automobile accident, a plane crash. You know, everybody goes about their activities thinking, okay, I'm 40 years old now. I'm not 40, but thinking, I'm 40 years old now, I have another 45 years to go. But we don't know for sure. And yet when death comes, if it comes unexpectedly like that, we're caught completely off guard, and then the mind is just overcome by a momentary panic. Wow, I'm being wiped out. But if we practice the meditation on death regularly and recognize we might die any time, then if death comes suddenly and unexpectedly, we can bring up that perception of death and see that, okay, this is the dress rehearsal that we've been going through, you know, day after day. Now, you know, the screen is opened up, we're before the audience, and we know our lines. So we could go through the experience with courage, with equanimity, fearlessly.